Ladies and gentlemen, let me set the tune.
It translates to, hence the name, Eta Nonna Wastina. It translates to where they lived good and beautiful lives. Learning to say the name is just a small way we can all be accountable to healing our relationship with our nation's first peoples. So let's go. Try it with me. Eta Nonna Wastina. Eta Nonna Wastina. Eta Nonna Wastina.
Eta Nonna Wastina.
Hence the name.
So why are they doing this? I just realized I had a speaker on there, so you guys are probably getting some reverb just as well. Why do they keep doing this? Why are they always constantly pushing the oppressor-victim narrative? Well, that's to distract you from what they're doing to you right now, which is the topic of today's Second Breakfast. Welcome to Second Breakfast, the stream of consciousness that fills part of the gap between the no answer period and Blazing Catcher Fridays, which we do every Friday here instead of Second Breakfast. We're streaming on 3 platforms, Rumble, X, and YouTube. Well, X as long as it's still allowed in Canada, seeing as the far left seem to be fleeing X because they can't stand being held accountable for their daily fuckery. So please give us a like, thumbs up, follow, share, subscribe. Most of all, the chat is up, so please feel free to ask anything. And comments drive the algorithm when I'm not driving it down with my forbidden words. So if you're watching this on repeat, please leave us a comment. You will get a response. This veteran appreciates your support. Please visit my channels. And speaking of channels, of course, we have our our Rumble. And of course, if you're not familiar with Rumble, Rumble works rather differently. You will have a central account, and then from this account, you will have separate channels. And of course, I have my gardening channel, which will be starting up in a couple of months again. As the summer season starts, we also, of course, have our YouTube channel. Here we have Occam's Razor. And of course, there is a gardening channel on YouTube as well. Just don't have that up. And of course, on our X, you'll notice that the placeholder that we mentioned early on when we started the Second Breakfast that we would post this video this Saturday, which was yesterday. And so it's up. You can watch it on any of our channels, show it to your friends. It really encapsulates the message of the Liberal Party, wanting to bring everyone into their new world order. I hope you're having a wonderful day, wonderful morning, ready to face the day. And if you're still waking up, well, the following half hour should get your blood pumping pretty hard. And what I always like to do to ensure that I'm ready to face the day, and that is to always thank my higher power for my life. The fact that I'm alive every day when I wake up is a gift from my higher power. I like to thank my higher power for my wealth and for my health in whatever state that those things are. When I say wealth, I don't mean my material wealth. I mean my spiritual wealth, of course. And I always like to pray for others, those that I love and those that I don't, because next is where I asked help in learning to love those that I don't, and learn acceptance throughout the day, and help to get through this one day, just today. We'll deal with tomorrow when tomorrow comes. For today, here we are, and let's get on with this show and get into this first little bit here. So why do we always want this victim oppressor narrative? Well, so that they can pull stuff like this. Now, here's Ryan Garrettson posting Professor William Happer, a physicist and professor emeritus at Princeton University, explains what net zero is about. Spoiler, it has nothing to do with altering the climate.
It's driven by money. Lots of people are making. Here we're talking about trillions of dollars. You know, if you really went to net zero, the economic implications would just be enormous. You know, people would have to lower their standard of living greatly. It would cause enormous damage to the environment. You know, you cover the world with windmills and solar panels. So it's driven by money. Lots of people are making lots of money. So it's driven by money. It's driven by power. And then it's driven by poor people who fundamentally believe, you know, and that they really have been misled into thinking that there is an emergency. And you have to be sympathetic to them, you know. Who wouldn't want to save the world if the world was in danger? It is not really in danger, but many people are convinced that it's in danger. But, you know, there's this old saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and we're on the road to hell with net zero.
Indeed, we are. Thanks, Professor. And of course, who's the king of net zero in Canada? Well, of course, it's Mark Carney. And all these liberal policies that have been driving us towards insane amounts of money being thrown out the window at net zero incentives that have done nothing but failed drastically. Here we have Stellantis sells its stake in Windsor battery plant for just $100 in massive write-down on EV investments. You ever wonder why New Brunswick wants to completely remove its government from X? Because they're really big in on this net zero green energy scam in New Brunswick, because there's a lot of lefties there and they do not want this truth getting out. They don't want anything that is counter to their narrative bursting their little bubble of reality that they've created around them. Their cognitive dissonance, refusing to accept the reality that what the path that they are heading down to is just increased poverty for everyone. And New Brunswick will be laid waste with tons of toxic green energy waste. You can't make this stuff up. The federal Liberals and Ontario pissed away over $50 billion on EV and battery plants. $50 billion. Well, really, that's only 50 out of the 52 weeks of interest debt charges in Canada right now. Or what are we, $1 billion a week, $10 million per hour in interest. Yeah. So, $50 billion on EV battery plants. Pissed away and sold for $100. That's not a typo. $100. This country is a joke. Why would anyone come to Canada and invest when we have such a record of failure like this? Why would anyone vote Liberal again after this amount of waste and failure? Oh, I know why. Because of the fear narrative. Oh, yes. Must make the opposition look like they're bad orange man, MAGA friendly anti-vaxxer, misogynist. I hate blue-haired people. Come on, they'll just keep making all kinds of stuff up just to create a victim narrative. So, yeah. Here's a good one from Ryan Garrettson, and it's Peterson explaining exactly the path that we are heading down because of maroons like this guy that he's talking to who has completely been brainwashed into the climate scam. Remember, so they have been indoctrinating children in Canada in schools, right, into this climate fear. That's why our kids are really screwed up right now, right? Because they're making them afraid of everything. Oh, you're confused about your gender. Oh, be afraid of the climate. Oh, be afraid of Orange Man bad. Oh, be afraid of this, be afraid of that. They're not teaching them just the basics, the 3 R's, right? They're constantly indoctrinating them in fear and political ideology. If you guys don't think this is true, just look at the material coming out of the teachers' colleges in each of the provinces. That's where it goes. I mean, it's the red diaper doper baby thing started back in the 60s, and it's taken a while to filter through the system. And it's gone through a few incarnations over time. And now it's progressed into cultural Marxism. And which is why there's so many people in society today who actually believe this chicken little thing that the sky is falling. The carbon credits must be brought in to save the planet. So let's listen to Jordan.
Record temperatures that have been declared for like the past 5 years that have also increased with the concentration of parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that there is an impact on climate across the planet.
I think that's highly deniable. We have no idea what the impact is from. We don't know where the carbon dioxide is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. This isn't data. This is guess. And there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it. It has this guise of compassion. Oh, we're going to save the poor in the future. It's like that's what the bloody communists said. And they killed a lot of people doing it. And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several 100 million of them now, well, that's a small price to pay for the future utopia. And we've heard that sort of thing before. And the alternative to that is to stop having global level elites plot out a utopian future. And that's exactly what's happening now with organizations like the WEF. And if this wasn't immediately impacting the poor in a devastating manner, I wouldn't care about it that much, but it is. I watched over the course of the last 5 years, the estimates of the number of people who were in serious danger of food privation rise from about 100 million to about 350 million. That's a major price to pay for a little bit of, what would you say, for progress on the climate front that's so narrow it can't even be measured.
I don't think the increase in hungry people on the planet is because of climate policies.
Why not?
Because I don't think that countries in Africa are being pushed away from fossil fuels. I think most developing nations.
Of course they are. Right? They can't even get loans from the World Bank to pursue fossil fuel development. And there's plenty of African leaders who are screeching at the top of their lungs about that because the elites in the West have decided that, well, it was okay for us to use fossil fuel so that we wouldn't have to starve to death and our children had some opportunities. But maybe the starving masses that are too large a load for the world anyways shouldn't have that opportunity. And that's direct policy from the UN, fostered by organizations like the WEF. They're going to have to turn to renewables. Yeah, well, good luck with that, because renewables have no energy density. Besides that, they're not renewable and they're not environmentally friendly. And that's one of the things that makes me extremely skeptical of the entire narrative. It's like two things. The left will sacrifice the poor to save the planet. And the left will deindustrialize even at the nuclear level, despite the fact that it devastates the poor. And that's even worse, because if you devastate the poor and you force them into a short-term orientation, in any given country where starvation beckons, for example, they will cut down all the trees and they will kill down all the animals and they will destroy the ecosphere. And so even by the standards of the people who are pushing the carbon dioxide externality control, all the consequences of that doctrine appear to me to be devastating, even by their own measurement principles. We're trying to fix the environment. Well, boys and girls, doesn't look like it's working. All you've managed to do is make energy 5 times as expensive and more polluting. You were wrong. That didn't work.
I'm talking about the
Very damning indictment. And it's a very simple argument to make. And it's a topic that the mainstream media will not touch, will not talk about, because they're being funded by the liberals who are pushing the same net zero scheme. So, getting on, so now that we've done all this prep work, let's get into how the liberals are going to be stealing more of your money, in spite of acting like they're not.
We've got some good news and some bad news when it comes to the ban on the sale of gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles. The good news is you've got the government's attention. Yeah, big time. Okay, Prime Minister Mark Carney has now announced that they're no longer going to outright ban the sale of gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles. Remember, this ban was going to start in 11 months. Yeah. The federal government was planning on forcing car dealerships to have 20% of all of their new vehicle sales be electric vehicles, EVs, okay? So that means that if you're at a car dealership starting next year, it was going to be that 2 out of every 10 new vehicles had to be EVs. That was just going to get more and more restrictive as the years went on. Eventually, outright banning the sale of normal gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles. Now, the Taxpayers Federation, all of our supporters, our army of tax fighters, we kicked up a big fight over this and said, no, we do not have the money for this. We don't have the electricity for this. We can't afford to do this, and the government shouldn't be telling you what kind of vehicle you're allowed to purchase and drive in Canada.
Yeah, so on top of all that, which the biggest thing that nobody seems to talk about is that why are the liberals, why are people on the left always insisting on telling you what to do? Why can't they just leave well enough alone? Why do they always have to create this victim oppressor narrative of having to come in and save you from whatever? No, no, no. Government should be able to manage what people require in their society. That's at the governmental level. Not start imposing all kinds of ideological narratives and start driving the economy in that direction, which is, of course, what they've done in order to, I don't know, make $1 trillion vanish from the economy into somebody's pockets, right? Then they've not nonstop money printing. But overall, it's the ideological narrative. Why do they have to push this control on people all the time? And why don't people wake up to this? Because every time the liberals come in, I've been around for 6 decades, every time the liberals come into power, they always have to change things. They always have to impose new rules, try to change society, and they always do it through enforcement. And in the process, there's always humans who get hurt along the way. And they don't care because they build their future on a mountain of skulls. That is a history of far leftism in Canada. In every aspect of socialism, it always increases until it starts to climb on itself on a mountain of skulls. And we've seen this with MAID. We've seen this with the failed VISP. We've seen this with their forced injection of the C19 injection. We've seen this over and over again. The amount of human collateral damage from liberal policies, and the liberal press remains quiet because they will not bite the hand that feeds them. But the Taxpayer Federation is not funded by the liberals, which is why they are one of the most vocal ones and why they continually to hold this government to account.
There was that big fight. So now Carney is in retreat, okay? He made this big fancy announcement, okay, saying, oh, no longer shall we have this ban on the sale of gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles. But the devil's in the details, okay? This is now being camouflaged under the leaf cover of corporate welfare. Yeah. Billions of more dollars are going to be going the corporation's way, coming out of your taxpayer wallet. Yeah, just brace yourself for that, folks. So he's going to use the old tools, the big carrots, okay, of corporate welfare and the still there stick of regulations to essentially try to do the same thing, to get you driving electric vehicles or battery powered vehicles. But, it's all in this book, folks. If you have not read this book written by Prime Minister Mark Carney, I strongly encourage you to do so. Why? Because he lays out his plans in here, and he's got your wallet. It's a super important thing to know how that person thinks and what his plans are. So what does this mean, okay, for the actual sale of normal gasoline and diesel powered vehicles? Devil is going to be in the details there, okay? Because they're talking about things like tailpipe emission regulation, big government, blah, blah, blah. All of it sounds super expensive. And he keeps talking about helping huge multinational vehicle corporations with your tax dollars. That's how he's going to be helping, okay? So a few things here. A, it's important to take the win on this, even as it is, because they are in retreat, okay? So that's a big deal. The other part, though, is that the war's not over. Instead of coming over the ridge at you in big, red vests and red coats, they're hiding in the bushes now. So you still got to fight them metaphorically, but yeah, they're there. I wanted to point this out because as of right now, we don't have the electrical grid infrastructure to power these battery powered vehicles.
That's right. That's been pointed out from the onset. Currently, the electric grid, and this was before it was overtaxed through uncontrolled mass immigration over the past 4 years. Before that, it was known that our grid could handle about 2 to 3 electric cars per city block, maybe. That's about it. The power requirements to charge them up, that was about all we could afford. And they wanted to just inundate Canada with electric cars. The fact that there are no energy stations along the line to charge them, the fact that it takes a long time to charge, the fact that it creates a new driving condition called range anxiety. Yes, that's right. Um, because electric vehicles are so finicky, you don't know what your range is because your battery's temperamental on so many things. You start turning on different apps and stuff, or the weather changes, or the steep climb, because the car just thinks it's on a flat surface all the time. It doesn't take into consideration going up hills, going down hills, driving in inclement weather, and all these things will affect your range. And then, of course, the older your car gets, the less your battery holds a charge, so your range decreases. Then after about 5 years, your battery's toast anyway. You're gonna have to replace the whole bloody thing. So, do you imagine having to replace your car every 5 years when you didn't intend to? Well, I mean, a lot of people will get a car loan, pay it off over a certain time, 3 years, 7 years, whatever it takes, right? But once they paid off that car, some people like to hang on to that car for a while, but you won't be able to, unless, of course, you factor in the cost of having to replace that massive battery pack every time. And I've talked about it. I worked in the aircraft industry. We had a condition known as thermal runaways, and this usually happens when a battery is damaged. And here you have these solid state batteries in many cases that are get a little bit of damage into them, they create a little hot spot, and next thing you know, poof, big explosion, a lot of burning. Not very, very friendly. So with EVs, overall, just really not a good idea for Canada. Can't afford the infrastructure because it should have been built by now, but it's not. Now we have a lot of poor people, quarter of the population dealing with food insecurity. So, let alone the people that aren't going to be buying them. A lot of the criminals out there are going to be looking at these charging stations out in the middle of nowhere, going, "Let's knock out the surveillance cameras in the area and rip that thing down and sell the copper," because that's where we've gotten to in a society. As society breaks down, which is where the liberals have taken us, infrastructure becomes a liability. Security is going down in the toilet because Nobody trusts anybody anymore, especially the government, because every time you turn around, they got a bigger hand in your pocket, and they're not accountable for their failed results. Now, here's a little piece here from Fight for Canada. This guy's quite prolific. He puts out at least 2 videos a day. And when he starts explaining at the beginning of his video, this is not the only place this is being discussed. This has been discussed by many people. Even a former Prime Minister of the UK has said this. Let's listen.
London capital and finance scandal, and the vast majority of Canadians have no clue what it is you're talking about. The man who is currently the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, spent 5 years as the Governor of the Bank of England, during which the largest Ponzi scheme in that country's history was perpetrated. A total of $237 million was stolen from about 11,600 pensioners. What was sold as mini bonds actually turned out to be high-risk assets that blew up, as I said, costing investors $237 million, took place between 2013 and 2018, perfectly coinciding with Mark Carney's time as the Governor of the Bank of England. Now, part of Carney's role as the Governor of Bank of England was overseeing regulatory bodies who were supposed to be overseeing companies like the one that pulled off this massive scandal, London Capital and Finance.
Now, we covered some of this yesterday by showing you the moose chart that David has over on Moose on a Loose, where he demonstrated where all the connections were in this and how this actually related in some ways to Epstein. Remember, Mark Carney's name is in the Epstein files. So is Trudeau's. 69 times, apparently. 69! I might have got the number wrong, but it's up there. The fact that his name is in there and the press is not talking about it, the fact that this is a reality, in that the mainstream media did not talk about this during the election. They won't talk about it during the next election. The only place you're going to find it is on X, which is why more and more the liberals are slowly building this narrative that X is dangerous and must be banned from human consumption in Canada because, they might tell the truth about them. Like this stuff here.
The vast majority of Canadians are totally unfamiliar with this scandal. It's now back in the news and relevant because Carney's involvement is tied into the Epstein files. Carney was mentioned 69 times total in the files. Also has images taken beside Ghislaine Maxwell. Don't know very many people have images taken beside one of the most notorious sex predators of the past couple of decades, as well as 69 mentions in the files. Even if you claim Carney did nothing wrong, to suggest that that is not even worthy of a mention by the Canadian news media is a total joke. So for 5 years, the 5 years coinciding with Carney's time as the Governor of the Bank of England, this massive $237 million Ponzi scheme goes. Carney is then investigated when they finally discovered, because Carney, part of his role was overseeing to ensure that this type of scandal does not happen, and it happened on his watch. And during this time, Epstein was found to be monitoring the situation, and for whatever reason, we don't know exactly why that is, he was running literally a pedophile blackmail ring. So for whatever reason, he had some sort of interest in what was happening politically in England. There are rumors that he had to do with the new head of Barclays. Somehow blackmail had a role in getting him posted to the position. The man's name was Jess Martins. But he wanted for whatever reason, he was engaged in this London Capital and Finance in wanting to understand what was going on with the investigation of Carney. As I said, there's no proof of wrongdoing on Carney's part, but for whatever reason, he was on Epstein's radar. But this is not about Epstein's radar. This is about the fact that the Canadian citizens have zero stories. I quadruple checked, whether it be CBC, CTV, Global News, zero stories on Carney's involvement in the failing to oversee the largest Ponzi scheme in England's history. This was a con job that saw hundreds of millions of dollars stolen from pensioners. Part of Mark Carney's role was to oversee the regulatory bodies that are supposed to protect consumers from Ponzi schemes like that. He was investigated. Ultimately, he was not found guilty of anything, but he certainly, when you read through the papers, was found not to have done a good job in his role as an overseer. As I said, it was a...
And that's really the whole part of it, right? They kept touting Carney as this big investment banker who's really good at his job. You know, he was in charge of the Bank of Canada and the UK, and we should trust him, and he can deal with Trump. And it turns out that he can't even manage the job that he does. He couldn't even perform his regulatory oversight duties. For some reason, he was like, "Oh, nothing here. Can't see nothing. Oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's just old people's pensions." Isn't it strange that for the past months now, the whole next investment scheme that the Liberals have been pushing is this using Canadian pensions to fund further development in Canada? Yeah, well, we've seen their history of development when it comes to their net zero insanity, where you pour in billions and you have a fire sale, a literal fire sale, $100 for $1 billion worth of investment, for billions of dollars worth of investment. That's the future of your pensions, Canada, if the Liberals have their way, because they've had their way with the economy. You know, and if we played a little bit more of what Chris Sims says there, like imagine building a hospital, $1 billion hospital every month, all shiny, all new equipment, everything, just building it, brand new $1 billion, and then burning it down. And then doing it every month, building a new hospital and then burning it down. Because that's what we're doing right now in interest payments. Every month, $1 billion in payments, $10 million per hour, with nothing to show for it because of the nonstop insane spending by the Liberals. And they will continue to push their fear-based narrative to make you vote for them, because the other guy will do a much more horrible job. A much more horrible job. All right, so let's close up with Ron here. Ron, like I said, Ron was my father's name. So I don't know if that's why I like this Ron so much, but he just tells it like it is, right? And in some ways, the money management system in Canada is becoming over-intrusive, very over-intrusive. You know, it's going to get to a point now with that if you transfer anything more than $10,000 for any reason, your account's going to get locked down, investigated for months. You can't even have more than $10,000 in cash on hand, or they just want to control absolutely everything. And often they will use it under the guise of safety. Oh, it's for your safety. That's why we're doing it. Well, we'll finish off here with Ron explaining how incorrectly FinTrack has gone when it comes for mortgage owners. People who've actually been paying into a mortgage for years now be investigated by FinTrack if they want to pay down their mortgage. It's insane. This is your liberal economy, Canada. We'll finish up with Ron, and then we will do an outro. Thanks all for coming out. Please like, share, subscribe. We'll see you again tomorrow morning after this last video.
So let's talk about how this thing at FinTrack has gone from a great idea to stop terrorist money coming into the country and to throttle back on criminal financing. And let's just talk about how it's gotten to totally fucking ridiculous. Okay. All right. We got a gentleman who wants to pay down his mortgage. His renewal is up. He says, my renewal's up and I've got a little inheritance and a little bit of money I've saved up, and I want to pay down my mortgage. The renewal's here, so it's open. I can either switch to another lender or just pay more money to my existing lender, and I want to put $50,000 against my mortgage. And we get this every day. We get these requests every day. I mean, you know, the thing that everybody in the mortgage business should be pushing is pay down your mortgage. Pay down your mortgage is the best idea for average people that I've ever run into in financial planning. Pay down your mortgage, pay it off eventually. So that's fine. We let the bank know, okay, he's going to be paying down his mortgage $50,000, and so we need to we're going to have a smaller amount on renewal. Wait, says the bank. Hold on, stop everything. If he's going to prepay his mortgage, if he's going to pay down his mortgage, we need to know where that 50 grand is coming from. What the fuck? Like, what? Okay. Like, this isn't like buying a house. Like, we know that money laundering could have something to do with buying a house. Like, you buy the house, you got the down payment, you need a mortgage, and then when you sell the house, then the money comes back and it's been cleaned through a check from the lawyer's office. But, that's why you have to check on the down payment, make sure you understand where the down payment's coming from. But this is a prepayment. They're in the house. They own the house. They bought the house. They just want to do what every Canadian's supposed to want to do, is pay off their mortgage faster. So the bank says, wait a second. We know he's got the right to do this, but FINTRAC says we have to understand where this money's coming from. You need to supply 3 months bank statements. If there's large money coming into the deposit there, we need to backtrack where that money's coming from. We need to know exactly where this prepayment's coming from. And you know what my reaction to that is? FINTRAC, you're fucking crazy, okay? This is not why you were put into place. This is not the reason behind FINTRAC. It is not why you're here. You are just empire building, increasing your head count, and wasting people's time and creating work for nothing. There's nobody alive would launder money through mortgage prepayment. It's just fucking stupid, okay? Oh, I don't know, Ron. Maybe you're wrong on that. I think you could launder money that. No crook would launder money that way. That's just too stupid for words. Like, wait till renewal, pay a little bit of. It's not even a lot of money. It's not like a $500,000 down payment. Like, and this is just an average person. Like, you can tell from looking at his occupation, looking at everything. This is not money laundering. It's crazy to even think of it as money laundering. But why do that? Why make him track all of this money? Where did this money come from? You're paying down your mortgage. Show us where it came from.
Go watch Ron on his channel, on his X account. Follow him on X if you can. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.